The alarms screamed through the small ship. Admiral Dae Sung sat in his pilot seat and watched the red lights flash across his control panel. His hands moved slowly over the controls, not rushing, not panicking. He had done this before, many times before. The massive Valtorian battlecruiser appeared on his screen. It was 10 times bigger than his scout ship, maybe 20 times. Dae Sung had stopped counting years ago. The aliens called themselves the Valtorian Empire. They ruled over 800 star systems. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had millions of soldiers, and right now, they had him. "Human vessel, power down your engines," a voice said through his communication system. The voice was translated by his computer, but he could still hear the smugness in it. "You are now property of the Valtorian Empire." Dae Sung looked at his reflection in the dark screen in front of him. He was 67 years old. His face was covered in scars, 3 long ones across his left cheek, a burn mark on his neck. His hair was gray, almost white. His eyes were tired, but they were also calm. He pressed a button. "This is Admiral Dae Sung of the Human Defense Force. I surrender." The voice on the other end laughed. "Wise choice, human. Prepare to be boarded." Dae Sung stood up from his seat. He walked to a small panel on the wall and pressed his hand against it. A soft beep sounded. The panel glowed green for just a moment, then went dark. He smiled. Everything was working perfectly. The Valtorian soldiers came through his airlock 10 minutes later. They were tall, maybe 7 feet high. Their skin was purple and covered in scales. They had 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light of his ship. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. "On your knees, human," the lead soldier ordered. Dae Sung got on his knees. They put restraints on his wrists. The metal was cold against his skin. They pulled him up roughly and pushed him toward their ship. He didn't resist. He walked calmly, looking around at everything. The walls, the doors, the control panels. He memorized it all. The inside of the Valtorian ship was huge. The ceilings were high. The corridors were wide. Everything was made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Dae Sung counted his steps. 35 to the first junction, 42 to the second, 12 more to the detention area. They threw him into a cell. The door slid shut with a hiss. The room was small. A bed, a toilet, nothing else. Dae Sung sat on the bed and waited. 3 hours passed. Then a Valtorian officer came to his cell. This one was different. She wore a uniform covered in metals. Her scales were darker, almost black. She looked at him through the energy barrier that served as his cell door. "I am Commander Silvera," she said. "You will be presented to Empress Velthara. You will answer her questions. You will tell her everything about your pathetic species." Dae Sung looked up at her. "And if I don't?" Silvera laughed. It was a harsh sound. "Then you will die, slowly. We have many ways to make humans talk." "I see," Dae Sung said. He leaned back against the wall. "When do I meet this Empress?" "Now." The cell door opened. More soldiers came in. They pulled Dae Sung to his feet and pushed him down the corridors again. They entered a large chamber. In the center was a holographic projector. It activated, and suddenly Dae Sung was standing in what looked like a throne room. It wasn't real. He knew that. He was still on the ship. But the hologram was so perfect that he could almost believe he was actually standing in the Valtorian palace, millions of miles away. The throne room was filled with Valtorian nobles, hundreds of them. They all wore expensive clothing. They all looked at him like he was an insect. And sitting on a massive throne made of black crystal was Empress Velthara. She was huge, bigger than any Valtorian Dae Sung had ever seen. Her scales were pure white, and her eyes glowed red. She wore a crown that seemed to be made of living energy. It flickered and pulsed above her head. "So this is a human," she said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. How disappointing. I expected something more impressive. The nobles laughed. The sound filled the room like thunder. Empress Velthara leaned forward. Human, I am told you are an admiral, a military leader. Is this true? Yes, Dae Sung said simply. Then you understand military matters. You understand when a battle is lost. She gestured with one of her 4 arms. Your species controls 3 star systems. 3. We control 847. Your largest ship carries 100 soldiers. Our smallest battle cruiser carries 10,000. You have no chance. None at all. Dae Sung said nothing. He just stood there, looking up at her. I have sent a message to your leaders, the Empress continued. They have 30 days to surrender all human worlds to the Valtorian Empire. If they refuse, we will exterminate your species, every man, every woman, every child. We will burn your planets until nothing remains but ash and dust. The nobles cheered. They clapped their hands. Some of them made clicking sounds with their mandibles. Dae Sung waited until the noise died down. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. Are you certain you want this war? The Empress blinked her red eyes. Then she laughed. It started as a chuckle and grew into a roar. The nobles joined in. The sound was deafening. Want this war? Velthara repeated. Human, this will not be a war. This will be an extermination. A cleaning of filth from our galaxy. Your species is weak. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are toys. You are the weakest species we have ever encountered. You are nothing. Dae Sung tilted his head slightly. Something in his expression changed. The amusement left his face. His eyes became cold, hard. Then you've made your choice. What did you say? The Empress leaned forward. You want war with humanity. You want to see what we're capable of. You want to learn what happens when you threaten our homes, our families, our children. Dae Sung took a step forward. The guards moved to stop him, but Velthara waved them back. She wanted to hear this. So we'll give you... Commander Silvera cut the hologram transmission. The throne room vanished. Dae Sung was back in the chamber on the ship. Silvera stood in front of him, all 4 of her arms crossed. Enough of your human arrogance, she said. Take him back to his cell. Let him think about his species' final days. The guards dragged Dae Sung away. As they pulled him down the corridor, he smiled. It was a small smile, a secret smile, because back on Earth, in a laboratory deep underground, Dr. Hei Wan was sitting at her desk when her computer screen flashed. A message appeared. Just one word. Eclipse. Her hands started shaking. She reached for her communication device with trembling fingers. She pressed a button and spoke 2 words. It's time. Across human space, in hidden bases and secret facilities, lights began to turn on. Engines began to warm up, weapons began to charge, and 2,000 ships that the Valtorian Empire didn't know existed started moving toward their targets. The old admiral sat in his cell. His eyes were closed. He was counting down in his head. 30 days, the Empress had said. She wouldn't get 30 days. She wouldn't even get 30 hours. Because humanity had been preparing for this moment for 80 years, and Dae Sung hadn't been captured. He had volunteered. He was exactly where he needed to be. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now it was time to spring it. Dr. Hei Wan ran down the corridor. Her lab coat flew behind her. Scientists and soldiers moved quickly around her, all of them rushing to their stations. The underground facility had been quiet for years. Now it was alive with activity. She burst into the main command center. Director Sung Ho stood in the middle of the room, looking at a wall of screens. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. When he saw Hei Wan, he nodded. Eclipse is active? He asked. Yes, Hei Wan said, trying to catch her breath. Dae Sung sent the signal. The Empress took the bait. She thinks we're weak. Sung-Ho smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. Good. Let her keep thinking that for a few more hours. He turned to the room full of officers. Activate all Shadow Fleet units. Send the recall signal to every hidden colony. This is not a drill. Operation Eclipse is now in effect. The officers began typing on their keyboards, speaking into their communication devices, giving orders. The screens on the wall changed. They showed star maps, ship positions, supply lines, everything humanity had been hiding for 8 decades. Heywan watched the screens. They really don't know, do they? They think we only have 3 systems. They only see what we let them see, Sung-Ho said. He pointed at the map. We showed them Earth, Mars Colony, and Alpha Station. 3 small systems with old ships and basic weapons. They looked at us and decided we weren't worth watching closely. But we have 47 colonies, Heywan whispered. 47 colonies in uncharted space, hidden stations, secret shipyards. We've been building and preparing since the first time we met the Valtorians. Sung-Ho's jaw tightened. They came to Earth 200 years ago. They were peaceful then. They smiled and called us friends, but they also classified us. Class 7 species, non-threatening, weak. We saw how they looked at us. Heywan remembered her history lessons. First contact had seemed wonderful at the time. The Valtorians had shared some technology, some star charts. They had traded with humanity, but they had also been studying humans, measuring them. And they had decided that humans were no threat to their empire. So we let them think they were right, Heywan said. Exactly. We showed them old fusion drives while we developed quantum engines in secret. We showed them basic energy weapons while we built plasma cannons. Every ship they saw was designed to look primitive. Every colony they knew about was small and struggling. Sung-Ho touched the screen. And while they weren't looking, we built this. The screen changed. It showed ships, thousands of them. They were sleek and dark. They had weapons built into their hulls, advanced engines, stealth systems. These weren't the clumsy vessels the Valtorians had seen. These were warships. The Shadow Fleet, Heywan breathed. 2,000 ships. 2,043, actually. We finished building the last batch 2 weeks ago. Sung-Ho looked at her. Your work made this possible, Heywan. The stealth technology, the improved weapons, all based on Valtorian tech that we captured and made better. Heywan thought about the past 15 years of her life, locked in laboratories, taking apart alien technology, learning how it worked, finding its weaknesses, and then designing better versions. She had never told anyone outside the military what she was doing. Not even her family. Captain Jiwoo's ship is ready? She asked. The Prometheus? Oh, yes. Jiwoo has been waiting for this day since she joined the Navy. Sung-Ho pulled up another screen. It showed a woman in her 30s. She had short black hair and fierce eyes. She's our best tactical commander, aggressive, smart, creative. The Valtorians have never seen anyone fight like her. Across space, on a military station orbiting a hidden moon, Captain Jiwoo stood on the bridge of her ship. The Prometheus was humanity's prototype warship. It had every advanced system humanity had developed: quantum drive, plasma cannons, stealth field, EMP missiles, and something special, something no other species had thought to put on a warship. Captain, we've received the Eclipse signal, her first officer said. Jiwoo felt her heart beat faster. Sound battle stations. All crew to combat positions. Charge all weapons. Plot a course for the Valtorian shipyard at Proxima Vale. That's deep in enemy territory, Captain. I know, Jiwoo smiled. That's why they won't expect us. Around her, the bridge crew moved to their stations. They had trained for this. They were ready. Jiwoo looked at the view screen. Out there, in the darkness of space, other ships were powering up. Hundreds of them, all moving toward their targets. On another station, Special Operator Hyun-sik checked his equipment. He was part of a team of 50 commandos. Their job was different from the ship crews. They would go inside enemy stations, sabotage, infiltration, making the enemy scared and confused. "You sure about this?" his teammate Bo-Ra asked. She was younger, only 25. This was her first real mission. "No," Hyun-sik said honestly, "but we do it anyway." He had done operations like this before, strike missions against pirate bases, rescue operations, but nothing this big, nothing against an entire empire. Bo-Ra finished putting on her stealth suit. "They think we're weak. Let them think that. Fear is a weapon, Bo-Ra. We're going to make them afraid." Back on Earth in the command center, an intelligence officer named Na-Ri was coordinating everything. She had 16 screens in front of her. Each one showed a different battle group, different targets, different timelines. "Shadow Group 1 is in position," she reported. "Shadow Group 2 will arrive in 4 hours. Group 3 in 6 hours. Sung-ho nodded. "And the false intelligence?" "Already planted in their network," said a young man sitting at a nearby console. His name was Woo Jin, and he was humanity's best hacker. "The Valtorians think we're panicking. Their intelligence says we're evacuating our colonies, moving civilians to bunkers. They think we're preparing to hide." "Good. Let them think we're running away. It'll make the shock bigger when we hit them." Sung-ho looked at the main screen. It showed the Valtorian Empire, all 847 systems. So many, so powerful. But humanity wasn't trying to conquer them, just make them understand. "What about Dae-sung's daughter?" Nari pulled up another screen. "Commander Subin is leading Strike Group 7. She has 30 ships. They're moving toward her father's location." Sung-ho frowned. "She's not going to do anything stupid, is she?" Dae-sung gave her direct orders. "Complete the mission first. Personal feelings second." Nari paused. "But she's still his daughter. She won't leave him there if she has a choice." "None of us want to leave him there." But he knew what he was doing. He volunteered to be captured. He's giving us intelligence right now. Every scan his neural implant takes of that ship, every conversation he hears, it's all being transmitted to us. Hae-won looked surprised. "Neural implant? I thought those were still experimental." "They are. Dae-sung tested the prototype himself. Said if it was going to fail, better it fail on an old man than a young soldier." Sung-ho's voice was sad. "He's been sending us data for the past 4 hours. Ship layouts, guard rotations, weapon placements. The Empress thinks she's holding a prisoner. She's actually invited a spy into her fleet." On the Valtorian ship, Dae-sung lay on his cell bed with his eyes closed. But he wasn't sleeping. Behind his closed eyes, he was watching data scroll past. His implant was scanning everything. The walls were made of durasteel alloy. The door lock used a 3-phase magnetic system. The guards changed every 6 hours, 12 soldiers per shift. They carried plasma rifles, Type 4 models, older versions, easier to jam. He memorized everything. The implant sent it all back to Earth in tiny bursts of quantum-encrypted data. The Valtorians would never detect it. They didn't even know such technology was possible. A guard walked past his cell. Dae-sung kept his breathing slow and steady. Let them think he was broken, defeated. That was fine. They would learn the truth soon enough. He thought about his daughter. Subin was a good commander. Strong, smart. She would do what needed to be done. He had taught her well, but he also knew she would try to rescue him if she could. That was fine too. He would scold her later. After they won. Because they would win. Humanity always found a way. It was what they did best. Survive. Adapt. Overcome. The Valtorian Empire had 800 systems, millions of soldiers, planet-killer weapons. They looked invincible. But they had one critical weakness. They were predictable. They followed rules. They used the same tactics over and over. They couldn't imagine anyone fighting differently. Humans didn't follow rules, not in war. They changed tactics mid-battle. They sacrificed pieces to win the game. They did things that made no logical sense, and it worked. Because logic wasn't enough in war. You needed creativity, madness, desperation. The Valtorians were about to learn what human desperation looked like, and Dae-sung was going to have a front-row seat. The Valtorian censor officer was having a normal day. Boring, really. He sat at his station on the defense platform orbiting the Empire's largest shipyard. Nothing ever happened here. This was the core of Valtorian space. Safe, protected. The war, when it came, would be over in hours. The humans would surrender or die. Either way, his job would remain boring. Then his screen started showing something strange, a gravity reading. But that didn't make sense. There was nothing out there, just empty space. "Commander," he said slowly, "I'm detecting an anomaly." His commander, a veteran soldier named Korval, walked over. "What kind of anomaly?" "Massive gravity signature. It's like something very large just appeared at the edge of our sensor range." Korval frowned. "Ships? I don't know. The reading doesn't match anything in our database. It's too big to be ships. Maybe a comet? Or an asteroid?" "Run a deep scan." The sensor officer started the scan. But before it could complete, all his screens went dark, just black, like someone had turned off the power. But the lights were still on. The other stations were still working. Just sensors. Just his screens. "Commander, I've lost all sensor data. I can't see anything." Korval grabbed his communication device. "This is Platform 7. We've lost sensor capability. Request immediate." He never finished. Through the window, he saw them. Ships. Hundreds of ships. They appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts becoming solid. Dark hulls. No lights. Silent. They had been hiding, using some kind of stealth technology, and now they were right on top of the platform. "Sound the alarm!" Korval screamed. "We're under at—" The Prometheus fired first. Captain Ji-woo had waited for this moment. She had dreamed about it, planned for it. "All weapons, fire!" The ship's plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Bright blue streams of energy hit the Valtorian platform. The shields held for maybe 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The plasma tore through the metal hull like it was paper. Explosions bloomed across the platform's surface. "Target the shipyard," Ji-woo ordered. "Those are military vessels. Destroy them before they can launch." The Prometheus moved forward. Behind it, 200 other human ships appeared. They dropped out of stealth and opened fire. The Valtorian shipyard was huge. It held 50 warships in various stages of construction. In 5 minutes, it held nothing but wreckage and fire. "Captain, enemy ships approaching from the inner system," her tactical officer reported. "How many?" 40, no, 50, 60 vessels. Ji-woo smiled. The Valtorians were fast to respond, but not fast enough. "Launch the drones." The Prometheus released 300 small drones from its belly. Each one was packed with explosives. They flew toward the approaching Valtorian ships. The enemy tried to shoot them down. They destroyed maybe half. The rest got through. The drones didn't try to damage the ships. They flew close and detonated. Each explosion released a powerful electromagnetic pulse. The EMP fried the Valtorian ship's electronic systems. Shields went down. Engines stopped. Weapons went offline. The ships drifted in space, helpless. "Now," Ji-woo said calmly, "finish them." The human fleet moved in. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out 100 times. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be. They struck fast and hard. They used tactics the Valtorians had never seen: stealth, EMP weapons, kamikaze drones, psychological warfare. At the Valtorian military command on their homeworld, Empress Velthara watched the reports come in. Each one was worse than the last. 3 shipyards destroyed. 7 defense platforms gone. 43 warships eliminated, and the attacks had only started 2 hours ago. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "They're supposed to have 3 systems. 3. Where are these ships coming from?" Her military advisor, General Thakkaran, looked at the data. His 4 arms were shaking. "Your Highness, we don't know. Our intelligence says humans only have small colonies, old technology. But these ships, they're more advanced than ours. Their stealth systems, their weapons. We've never seen anything like this. Then our intelligence was wrong." "Yes, Your Highness. Very wrong." Velthara stood up from her throne. "How many ships do they have?" "Current estimates, at least 2,000, maybe more." The Empress felt something she hadn't felt in decades: fear. 2,000 ships, hidden, right under our noses. For how long? "We don't know. Years, maybe decades." "Bring me the human prisoner, now." On Commander Silvera's ship, guards ran to Daesung's cell. They dragged him out roughly. He didn't resist. He walked calmly between them, still observing everything, counting steps, noting weapons, recording it all with his implant. They brought him to a communication room. The hologram activated. The Empress stood before him, but she wasn't sitting on her throne now. She was standing. And she looked angry. "You knew," she said. "You knew this was coming." Daesung looked up at her. "Yes. You let us capture you. This was a plan." "Yes." "Why? What does one old man hope to accomplish by getting captured?" Daesung smiled. It was a cold smile. "Intelligence. Every moment I'm here, I'm learning about your ships, your weapons, your tactics, and I'm sending it all back to my people. You didn't capture a prisoner, Empress. You invited a spy into your fleet." Velthara's red eyes widened. "General, scan him, now!" On the ship, soldiers ran into the room with scanning equipment. They pointed it at Daesung. The scans showed the neural implant immediately, a tiny device in his brain, quantum encrypted, still transmitting. "How long has he been sending data?" Velthara demanded. Silvera checked her console. Her face went pale. "Since we captured him, 4 hours, he sent ship schematics, guard patterns, weapon specifications, everything." "Kill the transmission!" "We can't. The encryption is... we don't know how to break it." Daesung laughed. It was a quiet laugh. "You studied human history, didn't you? Before you decided to invade us?" "Of course," Velthara said. "We know your species. You're violent, primitive. You fight each other over resources and land. Then you should have paid attention. You should have asked yourself a question. What kind of species survives ice ages, world wars, nuclear weapons? What kind of species looks up at the stars and decides to claim them, even though we barely understood fire a few thousand years ago?" "Arrogant fools," Velthara spat. "Survivors," Daesung corrected. "We survive because we adapt. We learn. We overcome. You're bigger than us, stronger, more advanced. So we became sneaky, patient. We built in secret. We planned for decades. And when you came to threaten our homes, our children, we were ready." "You're losing ships, too," the Empress said. "My reports say you've lost at least 300 vessels." "Yes. And you've lost over 3,000. The math isn't in your favor, Empress. Every battle, we trade one of our ships for 10 of yours. We can sustain that. Can you?" Before Velthara could respond, another message came through. "Your Highness, the humans are broadcasting something on all channels. You need to see this." The hologram changed. It showed a human broadcast. Images from Earth's history, World War II, Vietnam, Syria, humans fighting humans, cities burning, soldiers dying. Blood and fire and endless violence. The images were horrifying, brutal, raw, and underneath a message in every language the galaxy knew. "This is what we do to each other. Imagine what we'll do to you." Across Valtorian space, soldiers watched the broadcast. They saw humans fighting with a ferocity that seemed insane. They saw weapons that were designed only to kill. They saw a species that turned warfare into an art form, a science, a religion. Morale began to crack. Valtorian soldiers looked at each other. They had signed up to fight weak species, primitive civilizations, not this, not creatures that seemed to love war as much as they feared it. "Turn it off," Velthara screamed. "Block the transmission." "We're trying, Your Highness, but it's coming from everywhere. They've hacked our communication network." Daesung watched the Empress's face. He saw the fear there, the doubt. Good. You wanted to know what kind of species we are. Now you know. We're the species that survived every disaster our planet could throw at us. Every disease, every ice age, every extinction event. We survived each other, which is saying something. And we did it by being tougher, meaner, more stubborn than anything else in the universe. Your Highness, General Thakren said quietly, we've lost 40% of our fleet in 3 hours. 40%. At this rate, you lose. Daesung finished. You lose ships. You lose territory. You lose respect. And eventually, you lose everything. Velthara stared at him. For the first time in her long reign, she didn't know what to say. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The humans were weak, primitive. They were supposed to beg for mercy. Instead, they were tearing her empire apart. "Kill him," she said finally. "Kill the human." "Wait." General Thakren stepped forward. "Your Highness, if we kill him, the humans will have nothing to lose. Right now, they're fighting for his rescue, for their admiral. If he dies..." "If he dies what?" "Then they're just fighting for revenge, and humans are very good at revenge." Velthara looked at Daesung again. The old man smiled at her. A grandfather's smile, gentle, kind, and absolutely terrifying. "Cell," she said through gritted teeth. "Put him back in his cell." The war had been going for 26 hours. Humanity was winning, but winning had a cost. On Earth, Director Sung Ho looked at the casualty reports. 312 ships lost, 47,000 soldiers dead. Those were the military losses, the numbers he could accept, the numbers that came with war. But now there was a new problem. "Sir, the Valtorians have activated something," Nari said. Her voice was shaking. "We're detecting massive energy readings from their home system. It's a weapon, a big one." Sung Ho walked to her console. "Show me." The screen displayed a massive space station. It was the size of a small moon. Energy was building at its center, a terrible burning energy that made the sensors scream with warnings. "What is that?" Sung Ho asked. Dr. Haiwan had come up beside him. She looked at the readings and her face went white. "Oh no, it's a stellar converter, a star breaker. It takes energy from a star and focuses it into a single beam. That thing can destroy a planet in one shot." "Where is it aimed?" Nari checked the calculations. "Earth. They're aiming at Earth." The room went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Earth, home, 3 billion people. "How long do we have?" Sung Ho asked. 72 hours, it needs time to charge." "Can we destroy it?" Haiwan shook her head. "Not from the outside. The shields are too strong. We'd need to get inside. Disable the power core from within." "That's a suicide mission." "Yes, it is." Sung Ho closed his eyes. In war, someone always had to make the hard choices, the impossible choices. He had known this day might come. He had hoped it wouldn't. But hope didn't win wars. He opened his eyes and pressed a communication button. "Get me Commander Tae-young." The screen activated. A man in his 40s appeared. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. He had been Daesung's second-in-command for 15 years. Sung Ho had known him for 20. "Tae-young," Sung Ho said, "I have a mission for you. It's voluntary. You can say no. Tae-young looked at him. What's the mission? Sung-ho told him. About the Starbreaker, about Earth, about what needed to be done. Tae-young was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. I'll need 50 volunteers. Good ones. You'll have them. And sir? If we succeed, tell Dae-sung it was an honor serving with him. Tell him yourself when you get back. They both knew he wouldn't get back. But it was a nice lie. One that soldiers tell each other before impossible missions. 6 hours later, Tae-young and his team of 50 volunteers launched toward the Starbreaker. They used small ships, fast ones. The kind that could slip through enemy lines if the pilots were brave and skilled enough. They were both. But while Tae-young was flying toward his mission, something else was happening. Something that would cost even more. Governor Yoonji stood in her office on New Seoul. It was humanity's second-largest colony. 2.3 million people lived there. They had farms, schools, families. It was a good place, a happy place, until the Valtorian fleet arrived. Governor, we have 300 enemy ships in orbit, her military advisor said. They're demanding our surrender. Yoonji looked at the data. 300 ships, and New Seoul had 50 defense platforms. Good platforms, but not enough, not nearly enough. Can we evacuate? Maybe 2 million people, if we start now. And if the Valtorians give us time. They won't give us time. This is revenge. They're losing everywhere else. They want to hurt us, to break our will. Yoonji made her decision. Start the evacuation. Military personnel stay behind. We buy time for the civilians. Down on the streets of New Seoul, Marine Commander Dong-min was organizing his troops. He had 5,000 Marines. They were good soldiers, trained, ready. But 5,000 couldn't hold a planet against 300 warships. They would try anyway. Listen up, Dong-min shouted to his troops. The civilians need 12 hours to evacuate. We're going to give them 12 hours. We hold every street, every building, every inch of ground. The Valtorians want this planet. They're going to pay for it in blood. His Marines didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just nodded. They understood. This was the last stand. The place where they would die so others could live. The Valtorians landed their troops, thousands of them. They came in dropships and assault carriers. They had armor, heavy weapons, air support. Dongmin's Marines had rifles and determination. The battle for New Seoul lasted 14 hours. Not 12. 14. 2 hours longer than anyone thought possible. The Marines fought in the streets, in the buildings, in the sewers. They used every trick, every tactic. They made the Valtorians pay for every meter. In a hospital near the front lines, Dr. Yuna worked without stopping. She was a trauma surgeon. She had trained for emergency medicine, but nothing prepared her for this. The wounded kept coming. Marines with missing limbs, burned skin, terrible injuries. She worked on them, saved who she could, held the hands of those she couldn't save. Doctor, we need to evacuate, a nurse said. The Valtorians are 2 blocks away. Not yet, Yuna said. We have 3 more critical patients. We're not leaving them. She worked for another hour, saving lives while explosions shook the building. Finally, she loaded the last patient into an evacuation shuttle. She climbed in after them. Through the window, she could see the city burning, her city, her home. The shuttles lifted off. Most of them made it. Some didn't. The Valtorian ships shot at them. Some transports exploded, others crashed, but most escaped. 2 million people. Saved. 300,000 stayed behind, either because they couldn't leave in time or because they chose to stay and fight. In space, Tae-young's team reached the Starbreaker. They had lost 32 ships on the way. 18 remained. Tae-young's ship was one of them. Listen carefully, he told his team. We need to reach the central power core. We plant charges. We get out. Simple. They all knew it wasn't simple. But soldiers lie to each other. It helps. They docked their ships on the Starbreaker's outer hull. They cut through the metal. They went inside. The station was huge, endless corridors, guard posts everywhere. They fought their way through, one corridor at a time, one room at a time. Tae-young lost people, good people, men and women he had trained with, fought beside, friends. But they kept moving forward, because Earth needed them, because 3 billion people were counting on them. They reached the power core. It was massive. A sphere of energy in the center of a huge chamber. It pulsed with power, the star's energy captured and contained, ready to be unleashed. "Plant the charges," Tae-young ordered. His team spread out. They placed explosives around the chamber. High-yield plasma charges, enough to crack the containment field. If the field broke, the energy would explode. The Starbreaker would tear itself apart. "Charges set," his demolition expert reported. "But sir, the timer, it's not working. Something about the energy field. It's interfering." Tae-young understood immediately. "Manual detonation." "Yes, sir. Someone has to stay behind. Press the button." The team looked at each other. Then they all looked at Tae-young. "No," one of them said. "Sir, you should get to the ships," Tae-young said quietly. "That's an order. I'm the commander. This is my responsibility." They didn't want to leave. But orders were orders. They ran. Back through the corridors, fighting the guards, racing against time. Tae-young stood alone in the chamber. He thought about his life, about his family on Earth, about Dae-sung, who was probably still in that Valtorian cell, about all the people who would live because of what he was about to do. It was a good trade, he decided. One life for billions. Mathematics even a soldier could understand. He pressed the button. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The Starbreaker tore itself apart. The energy that was meant to destroy Earth instead consumed the weapon. It was beautiful, in a terrible way, like watching a star die. On Earth, in the command center, Sung-ho watched the explosion on his screen. He didn't cheer. He didn't celebrate. He just bowed his head. "Rest well, Tae-young," he whispered. "You saved us all." Nari's console beeped. "Sir, we have a transmission from Commander Subin." The screen showed Dae-sung's daughter. Her face was hard, angry. "Director, I want permission to rescue my father. We've won every battle. The Valtorians are falling back. Now's our chance." Sung-ho understood. He was a father, too. "What does your tactical analysis say?" "It says the mission is risky. We might lose ships, but it's possible." "And what do your father's orders say?" Subin's jaw tightened. "He ordered me to complete the mission objectives first, personal feelings second." "Then you know what to do." "With respect, sir, the mission is almost complete. We've destroyed their fleet, taken their shipyards, disabled their superweapon. We've won. Now I want my father back." Sung-ho looked at her. She was right. They had won. The cost had been terrible. New Seoul burned. Tae-young was dead. Thousands of others were dead, but they had won. "Go get him," Sung-ho said. "Bring the Admiral home." Subin smiled. It was fierce, dangerous. "Yes, sir, with pleasure." Commander Subin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. Around her ship, 30 more vessels moved in formation. They were deep in Valtorian space now, heading toward the ship that held her father. "Tactical, what are we looking at?" she asked. Her tactical officer studied the screens. "The flagship is running, heading back toward the homeworld. It has 12 escort ships, but they're damaged. We hit them pretty hard in the last engagement." "Can we catch them?" "Yes, Commander." "We're faster." Subin nodded. "All ships battle speed. Lock weapons on those escorts. I want them gone." The human fleet accelerated. The Valtorian ships tried to run, but their engines were damaged. Their shields were weak. The human ships caught up in 30 minutes. The battle was short, brutal, one-sided. The Valtorian escorts tried to fight. They fired their weapons. But human ships were designed for this. Fast, aggressive, deadly. In 10 minutes, all 12 escorts were destroyed or drifting dead in space. Only the flagship remained. "Hail them!" Subin ordered. The screen activated. Commander Silvera appeared. She looked different than before. Her uniform was burned. Her face was tired, defeated. "Human vessel, state your demands," she said. "You have someone who belongs to us. Admiral De Sung, return him now." Silvera's forearms crossed. "And if I refuse?" Subin smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then I destroy your ship, and you die. Your choice. You have 30 seconds. Silvera looked at something off-screen. She was probably looking at her sensors, seeing the human weapons pointed at her ship, seeing her shields at 5%, seeing her destroyed escorts. She was doing the math, calculating her chances. They were 0. "The human will be brought to the docking bay," she said finally. "Dock at port 7. 10 minutes later, Subin walked into the Valtorian flagship with 20 Marines. They wore full armor. They carried rifles. They were ready for a trap. But there was no trap, just exhaustion. The Valtorian crew looked beaten. They had fought for 28 hours. They had lost, and they knew it. Daesung was waiting in the docking bay. He stood straight, calm. His hands were still in restraints, but he looked exactly like what he was, an admiral, a commander, a man who had just won a war. Subin ran to him. She wanted to hug him, but she was a commander too, so she saluted instead. "Admiral? Orders?" Daesung smiled, that warm grandfather smile. "At ease, Commander, and you can hug your father now. We're not in combat anymore." She hugged him, tight. He hugged her back with his restrained hands. Around them, the Marines watched. Some of them were crying. They had gotten their admiral back. They had won. A Marine cut off Daesung's restraints. He rubbed his wrists. "How bad were the losses?" Subin's smile faded. "New Seoul is gone. 300,000 civilians. Tae Young is dead. He destroyed their superweapon but didn't make it out." Daesung closed his eyes. Pain crossed his face. Tae Young. He was a good man. A brother. He saved Earth. Saved 3 billion people. I know. But that doesn't make it hurt less. Daesung took a breath. "And the rest?" "We've destroyed 60% of their fleet. They've pulled back to defend their core systems. The Empress is still refusing to negotiate, but her own people are losing faith. We've intercepted communications. They're tired, scared. They want the war to end." "Good. Then let's end it." They returned to the Retribution. Daesung took command. He sat in the captain's chair and looked at the star map. The Valtorian Empire was huge, but it was broken now, fractured, weak. "Take us to the Valtorian homeworld," he ordered. But slowly. "I want them to see us coming. I want them to have time to think about what's coming." The human fleet moved toward the heart of the Empire. As they traveled, more ships joined them. The Prometheus, Jiwoo's ship, and hundreds more. By the time they reached the Valtorian homeworld, there were 800 human ships, more than half the entire Shadow Fleet. They didn't attack. They just surrounded the planet. Weapons pointed inward. A silent threat, a message. "We could destroy you, but we won't. Not yet." On the planet below, Empress Velthara sat in her throne room. It was empty now. The nobles had fled. Her advisors had disappeared. Only General Thakren remained. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "the humans are offering terms." "Terms? They offer me terms?" Velthara laughed. It was a bitter sound. "I'm the Empress of 800 systems. You were the Empress. Now we're losing. Our people are demanding peace. The colonies are refusing to send more soldiers. The fleet is in retreat. Your Highness, we have lost." Velthara stood up. She walked to a window. Outside, she could see the human ships in orbit, so many of them. They had come from nowhere, from the species she had mocked, the species she had called weak. "What do they want?" she asked. "Recognition of human territories, reparations for New Sol, a demilitarized zone, and—" Thackeran paused. "They want you to abdicate. They want a new government, a council. They want me to give up my throne. Yes, Your Highness." Velthara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What happens if I refuse?" "They destroy this planet, and then they move to the next one. And the next. They've proven they can do it. And they've proven they will do it. Your Highness, the humans didn't want this war, but they've shown us what they're capable of when we threaten them. We attacked their homes. They burned our empire. That's fair. In their mind." "Fair," Velthara repeated. "There's nothing fair about this." "No, there isn't. But it's over." The Empress looked at her throne. She had sat there for 40 years, ruled the greatest empire in the galaxy, and now it was ending, because she had underestimated one old human. "Tell them I accept their terms," she said. Tell them I was wrong." The transmission went out. The human fleet received it. In the command center on Earth, Director Sung-Ho smiled for the first time in days. "It's over," he said. "The war is over." The treaty was signed 2 days later, not on a Valtorian ship, not on a human ship, but on a neutral station between the two species. Dae Sung represented humanity. A council of Valtorian leaders represented their people. Velthara was not there. She had abdicated as promised. The terms were simple: human sovereignty over all claimed territories, 30 additional star systems as reparations, technology exchange programs, and peace. Finally, peace. After the signing, a young human reporter asked Dae Sung for an interview. They sat in a quiet room on the station. "Admiral, the galaxy wants to know, how did you win? The Valtorians were bigger, stronger, more advanced. How did humanity defeat them?" Dae Sung thought about the question. He thought about Tae Young, about the 300,000 dead on New Sol, about all the soldiers who would never go home. "We won because we had to," he said finally. "The Valtorians studied our technology and found it weak. They studied our territory and found it small, but they never studied our spirit. They never asked what kind of species survives ice ages and world wars. They never asked what we become when someone threatens our children, when someone tells us we can't have something. And what do humans become? Dangerous. We become very, very dangerous. But we also become creative, determined. We don't give up. Ever. That's what the Empress didn't understand. She thought if she hit us hard enough, we'd break. But humans don't break. We bend. We adapt. And then we hit back twice as hard. Some people say the war was too costly, that New Sol wasn't worth it." Dae Sung's face hardened. "Tell that to the 3 billion people on Earth who are alive because Tae Young died. Tell that to the children who will grow up free because Marines fought in the streets of New Sol. War always costs too much. That's why we tried to avoid it, but once it started, we had to win. Because the alternative was extinction. What's next for humanity? We rebuild. We remember our dead. And we make sure this never happens again. We'll be stronger now. More ready. The galaxy has learned what happens when you threaten humanity. We'll make sure they never forget." The interview ended. Dae Sung returned to Earth a week later. He retired from the military. He had earned it. He bought a small house in the countryside, far from cities, far from war. Subin took his place as admiral. She was younger, stronger, ready to lead humanity into whatever came next. Jiwoo became an ambassador. She worked to build relationships with other species, to make sure humanity had allies, friends, so they would never be alone again. Dr. Haewon continued her research, but now she worked openly. No more secrets, no more hidden labs. Humanity's technology was out in the open. Let the galaxy see what they were capable of. On New Sol, the survivors returned. They rebuilt. Slowly. It took years, but they rebuilt. And on the main square, they erected a memorial. 300,000 names. Every person who had died, so no one would forget. 50 years later, Dae Sung sat on his porch. He was old now, very old. His hair was completely white. His hands shook, but his eyes were still sharp. A young woman came to visit him. She was writing a book about the war. About the 30 days that changed everything. "Admiral Dae Sung," she said, "one last question. Do you regret it? The war? All those deaths?" Dae Sung looked at the sunset, orange and red across the sky. Beautiful, peaceful. "Every day," he said. "I regret every death. Every soldier who didn't come home. Every civilian who died in the crossfire. War isn't glorious. It's terrible. It's the worst thing humans do." "Then why fight?" "Because sometimes you have no choice. The Valtorians gave us 30 days to surrender or die. That's not a choice. That's a threat. And humans don't respond well to threats. We could have surrendered. Maybe they would have been kind masters. Maybe they would have let us live. But we would have been slaves. And humans don't kneel. Not to anyone. Not ever." "They say you're a hero." Dae Sung shook his head. "I'm not a hero. Tae Young was a hero. The Marines on New Sol were heroes. I just did what needed to be done. I let myself be captured so we could learn about the enemy. I stayed calm when the Empress laughed at me. But those young men and women who died, they're the real heroes. They paid the price for our freedom." The young woman stood to leave, but she had one more question. "What do you want people to remember? About the war? About humanity?" Dae Sung was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want them to remember that we tried to avoid the war. We didn't want to fight. But when we had no choice, we fought with everything we had. We were smart. We were fierce. We were willing to sacrifice. But most importantly, we knew when to stop. We could have destroyed the Valtorian homeworld. We could have killed billions in revenge. But we didn't. We made them surrender. We made them pay reparations. But then we helped them rebuild, because that's what humans do. We fight when we must. But we're also capable of mercy, of forgiveness. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us human." The young woman thanked him and left. Dae Sung sat on his porch as the sun set. He thought about the past, about the future, about all the people who had died so others could live. And he hoped that humanity would remember the lessons of the war, that they would stay strong but also stay kind, that they would be ready to fight but also ready to forgive. Because that was the balance, the hard balance that every species must find, the balance between being strong enough to survive and gentle enough to deserve survival. The galaxy would test humanity again. He knew that. Other threats would come, other wars. But now the galaxy knew the truth, knew what humans could do when pushed, knew that the small species from the little blue planet was not weak, not primitive, not insignificant. Humanity had looked at the stars and decided they belonged to them. And when an empire tried to stop them, tried to tell them no, humanity had responded with a single message. "You want war? We'll give you war. And we'll win." The Empress had laughed at the old man in chains, but she wasn't laughing now, none of them were, because they had learned the most important lesson. Never underestimate humanity. Never.